All right, guys, thank you for checking out this episode. I'm really excited today. I was able to get Casey Shifflet in for an interview. The topic that we're going to discuss is burnout in EMS, and I feel like this is a super important topic, especially considering the pandemic that we just got through. I was actually looking at an article this morning that was from 2019, just before the pandemic started, in GEMS, and they were talking about like 60% burnout rates in EMS. They pulled a whole bunch of paramedics and EMTs, and about 60% of them considered themselves burned out. And even a higher percentage were considering leaving EMS from that burnout percentage. And I just thought that was super unfortunate, and that was pre-pandemic. So I mean, you can imagine how people feel now, after what we just went through. A perspective change that I kind of had is I never feared getting whatever my patient was suffering from. Like, I never worried about, having chest pain or, a communicable disease for my patients. Whereas in the pandemic, you kind of lived in some fear that all the patients you're transporting, you're going to catch this virus that they have, bring it home to your family, give it to your grandparents, get sick of it yourself. And that was kind of a new thing, I feel like, for emergency medicine, where we feared the people we were taking care of to a degree. And now that we've emerged from that, I feel like burnout is still a very important topic to discuss and kind of figure out some tools to kind of use to overcome it. Whether you're on the ambulance or in the ER, burnout's a huge topic right now, and a lot of people are feeling very burned out. The article defines it with a couple of terms: exhaustion, decreased productivity, cynicism. And again, those are all things that can lead to medical errors and poor patient outcomes. So I feel like it's an important thing to kind of figure out some tools and strategies to overcome burnout and actually enjoy your job, and not just enjoy it, thrive in it. And I couldn't think of anyone more qualified to talk about this than somebody that's been in the field, I think, longer than I've been alive, and kind of figure out what's in your brain, pick your brain, and come up with some of these ways that you've thrived. At least from my perspective, you always have a great attitude when I see you, and you've been doing this a very long time. And so I feel like people really stand to benefit from kind of picking your brain and figuring out your perspectives. One disclaimer that I provide is that anything that we say is just our opinion. It doesn't reflect who we work for now, who we've worked for in the past. It's just our opinion only. So take it with just that in mind. Casey, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving me some of your background and how long you've been in EMS, how long you were an EMT, how long you were a paramedic, that kind of stuff.
Well, before you said, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, I was going to say this is what burnout looks like. I'm 22 and I've only been in the field for 2 years. So
you're brand new out of EMT school.
Yeah, so I had hair and stuff before I started. But anyway, which is true, I actually did. So I believe I'm the longest practicing paramedic in El Paso County.
Whoa.
Presently. I'm from Pueblo, Colorado. I was born and raised there. I was a wildcat. I went to Central High School. And I actually went to EMT school. Actually, that's not true. I didn't go to EMT school because back then you didn't have to be an EMT to work on an ambulance. So I worked for my ex-father-in-law, Glenn Grinstead, who was one of my mentors, and has passed away since just recently in the last couple of years. But anyway, I worked for him. He owned Alert Ambulance, and you only had to have a ambulance license from the county back then. So, but you had to take a test to get it, and it was basically an EMT test. And at 17, 18, I took that test and passed it, and I worked on the ambulance, and then I went into the Air Force.
Okay.
Once I was in the Air Force, I became an EMT while I was there, going to night school, and anytime that I was home on leave, I'd work on the ambulance, and I felt better about the job because I was now an EMT, and I could say, but I first started working on the ambulance 3 days after my first child was born, which was August 10th of 1976. So August 10th this year was 46 years that I've been doing this. I've gone to paramedic school since I started, and I went to paramedic school in 1979 and became a paramedic, full-fledged, cleared, certified in March of 80, and so I've been a paramedic since March of 80.
Gotcha.
I worked in Pueblo from 76 until 83 in Pueblo full-time, and then people like that I'd worked with down there, like Nancy Rush and Jeff Young. Jeff Young convinced me to come up here. He said, if you want to hone your craft, Colorado Springs is the place to do it, and he wasn't wrong. So I came up here to work with people like Randy Royal and Dave Mead and Rich Graff, and I was able to work with those folks, and it honed me.
Yeah,
and so
cool.
I've been doing that since.
What do you think is unique about Colorado Springs and El Paso County that a lot of other systems don't have?
Well, initially, most of the people who were working here went to the same school.
Okay.
Most of them, there were only a couple of schools in Colorado back then, and St. Anthony's was one of them. And I went to school at St. A's and graduated there, and we used to call it Holy Tony's by the sea because it was right by Sloan's Lake. And I'm proud to say that I was one of Jerry's kids, Dr. Gerald Gordon. He's essentially the person who brought paramedicine to Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I think that had a little to do with it, that, we had we had 2 ambulance companies, but almost everybody went to the same school, and the overwhelming majority did anyway. And I think that we were kind of, we'd done our ride time at Denver General, and at the time Denver General, Denver Health and Hospitals ambulance was probably one of the best places if you were a patient to ever encounter a paramedic, because your chances of making it out of the hospital alive was probably better than anywhere else in the world. So most of us went to school up there, went through their internships and stuff, and I think it just made us better medics. And we were free to do a lot of that stuff. Our physician advisors at the time were pretty aggressive and progressive, and and it's just built since then.
Right.
It just builds and builds.
So really kind of some leadership initially that was really, what's the word you used? Not proactive.
It was progressive.
Progressive.
Yeah.
Some very progressive leaders initially.
For sure.
Very cool.
Yep.
Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to pick your brain about is the statement or the phrase that you say when you clear base. At least for the 10 years that I was full-time, I heard it probably hundreds of times. I don't know if you still say it.
Oh, every day.
Let's hear it.
Medic 12, we're clear base, ready to save lives, alleviate pain and suffering wherever there's ugly head. We do this because we really like people.
I love that.
So, yeah.
Why do you say that every day?
Well, partially because it's true. That's what we're there for. Mm-hmm. We are there for saving lives and alleviate pain and suffering. And more so, the further out in the career that I got, the more it was not the saving the lives part, because that happens or it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But the alleviating pain and suffering, we really can have an impact on people, and so that is true. And because I really like people part is sarcasm, and how do we get through our days? We're sarcastic people as a general rule, and so we see so much tragedy and so much bad that sometimes we just have to be sarcastic, and that's how we get through.
Yeah, I love that.
But and I say it because I try to trip up the dispatcher on the other end of the radio and see how long it takes them to answer me sometimes, because they're laughing, but sometimes they don't.
Yeah. From my perspective, hearing that, even if I was having a rough day or not enjoying my job, I would kind of hear you clear base and say that and talk about what you get into the field to do is to alleviate pain and suffering, sometimes save lives if that opportunity happens, right? And I kind of sit up in my seat a little bit straighter and be like, okay, this is what we're here to do. This is the job. Get out of your head. This is what you're here to do. Yeah. And I like to think that a lot of people kind of felt that way, when you clear base. So I think that has a huge impact.
I appreciate that.
I love that you still do that every day. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I've added a little to it sometimes. I walk in the hospital and, they'll ask me how I'm doing. I always tell them I'm just here, glad to be part of the team and help in any possible way I can. Yeah. I got that from Mel Robinson, who retired from, Memorial, but he was one of my instructors in paramedic school, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful statement and super good perspective to have. One thing I want to talk about is burnout is not really something that happens because of your duration of time in EMS, right? Like we see people that are 6 months out of the academy, they've been an EMT for 6 months or a paramedic for 6 months, and you kind of see their attitude, their mentality, their bedside manner's terrible. They don't care about their patients. You know, they're less likely to give pain meds to something that's a really painful condition. You know, someone's having a kidney stone and they let their EMT tech the call. They didn't give pain medications. You see them in the hospital. They're very cynical. They're very arrogant a lot of times. And why do you think that is, or what do you think it is that's contributing to them feeling burned out that's not related to their length of time in EMS?
Well, I think that we live in a 2022 is a much more cynical age than 1976. It just is. As we've progressed and all the things that we've seen, these last 3 years have been just awful on staff, on not just us but police, fire, emergency technicians in the ER, X-ray techs, lab techs, nurses, PAs, nurse practitioners, doctors. They've all felt that pressure, and I've kind of seen that cloud of cynicism over all those people. And so I think that just the sheer pressure of the last few years has added to that. But before that, we had burnout as well. But I think that sometimes, it's kind of like teachers. Teachers go to school to be teachers, and they don't get to teach until the very end in most cases, and so they do their student teaching in the end and go, man, I really don't like kids. So now they've wasted this 4 years to get a degree in teaching, and now they get in it and find out that it wasn't what it's cracked up to be. And I think a lot of people get into EMS thinking, oh man, I'm going to drive with lights and siren, it's going to be cool, I'm going to have an air of respect heaped upon me that they don't necessarily have to earn, and they expect. And I think that dealing with, grandma 14 times in this, in a month that, should probably be in a nursing home and, continually falls or whatever, that doesn't stretch your intellect really as far as the job goes. I think that has a bit to do with it. Plus the sheer increase in workload, that has a ton to do with it. And we're expected to have more training, and I mean that's all heaped on top of us. You have your normal amount of training that you would do for continuing ed to keep your certification, but as I do, the companies that you work for, they insist on, you're going to have to redo EVOC, which is what we're in the middle of right now at AMR. Everybody that's been driving for forever now has to sit in a 4-hour class to. And I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a good thing. Keeps you fresh, but it also cuts into your family time and that kind of thing. So I think that those kind of pressures really lead to burnout. And some people just aren't meant for this job, and I think they get stuck in it and just, it makes them toasty. And then they get, and with those increase in job, in call volume, pretty soon you start getting those calls that are really, really heinous, kids, burnt, broken, beaten, and you see some just really bad calls
Yeah.
that really weigh on you. And when you add all of that together, it tends to make you crispy.
Yeah, I agree completely. That kind of leads to a couple other things I wanted to talk about. I guess one is kind of along the same lines, talking about those, not necessarily kids, but the amount of death that you do see on the ambulance. As a PA in the ER, I'm really not exposed to that like I was on the ambulance. There was one 48-hour shift I worked where I think I pronounced 3 different people in 48 hours, and having that discussion with family and determining whether the patient's non-viable and you don't work them at all, or whether you do everything you can for a half hour to try to bring this person back, and then having to have that discussion with the family. I would have considered myself burned out after that shift. I mean, 3 of those discussions it weighs on you really heavy. It's a lot to take in, and they don't teach you that in school. I mean, how are you supposed to prepare for that? How are you supposed to prepare to have that conversation? And I guess if you've done that a million times, and what would your advice be to somebody new to paramedicine or even a new EMT in having that discussion, and kind of, I guess, what mentalities do you have kind of surrounding that?
Well, first of all, I'd like to give kudos where kudos are, warranted. In Colorado Springs, we dual respond with Colorado Springs Fire Department, and probably 8 out of 10 times the lieutenant will handle that issue. They'll handle that, notifying the family that we're going to stop our efforts and so on and so forth. And but it's not always the case. And but those guys seem to be pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And gals, actually. But I think one of the things that I've found is you can't. It is received better when you don't sugarcoat stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. They're gone. That doesn't quite hit the mark. What do you mean they're gone? Oh, did you take them to the hospital?
Right.
No, I didn't take them to the hospital. But I'm also not crass. They're celestial discharge. They're assuming room temperature. So, I mean, I think the thing that I would say is that you have to be direct. I'm sorry to tell you this, but your significant other or whatever has died, and there's nothing more that can be done for them, either here or at the hospital.
Right.
And we don't tell them, oh, they're in a better place, because we have no idea what their spirituality is. We have no idea what their beliefs are. We have no idea, and so. I try to stay away from that. They're in a better place. Oh, well, they're suffering. There's no more suffering now.
Right.
And, they can come to their own conclusions.
Sure.
So I think simpler is better. And there's always those inevitable questions. Okay, well, where do we go from here? Well, do you have a family, preacher, or is there someone we can call for you? Or are there family members that we need to call and get in touch with for you? Which we offer, I always offer that. And so there's that part of it. And also, again, going back to fire and PD, they've got a chaplaincy that's available that they can, have respond, which also helps a lot. It's that's probably one of the most difficult parts, is dealing with the family. You can kind of distance yourself from the patient themselves, but it's hard to do that with the family, and it tugs at your heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.